All right, hello, this is David Raymond at the Virginia Cyber Range, and welcome to our weekly workshop. So today, we're going to be, excuse me, today we're going to be tackling some more CTF challenges. In this case, we'll be driving on with some web challenges. So let's start out, get to that in a few minutes. If you want to play along today, you should go ahead and snapshot this slide. If you haven't already logged into the capture the flag, the practice capture the flag environment, you can go to https://vacker.io/practicectf, and you'll get this. And then if you click the register button, you can create an account and start playing right away. If you have already created an account, and you're trying to log in and you can't, you don't remember your password, then there's a button there that lets you reset your password, and you'll get an email just like every other password reset system works. If you want a Linux environment, it's for today, we're going to use, at least I think at the end of today, I'm going to do a demonstration within the Virginia Cyber Range on the Cyber Basics environment. If we get this far, I'll show you how to do a password guessing attack against a website. You may or may not ever have to do this in a capture the flag competition, but it's helpful to understand how attackers might try to gain unauthorized access to your website. So if we get to it, we'll take a look at it. I think it's kind of interesting to see how this kind of a thing works. So if you need a Cyber Basics environment, you don't have access to one, then you can go to console.virginiacyberrange.org, click on the button that says have an invitation code, and then put in this code, and this code is good until April 16th, 2019. And if you're listening to this after that date and you don't have access to a Cyber Basics environment, then send an email to support@virginiacyberrange.org, and we will send you a new invitation code to use. All right, so moving on. Weekly workshops each Tuesday at 1 p.m. Most folks seem to be watching these after the fact, so it's all good. They're all hanging up on our website, virginiacyberrange.org, under the community tab. And if there's a particular topic you'd like to be covered in this, in one of these weekly workshops, then just send an email to contact@virginiacyberrange.org. I'm going to wrap up this discussion of capture the flag competitions, over the next 2 or 3 weeks. So then we'll be ready to do something else different. So a couple of news stories. I don't know, this may happen enough that it's not even news anymore, but another exposure of Facebook data. This is from TechCrunch website. 540 million records stored in 2 Amazon S3 storage servers. So these are both third-party entities, but it's still these are Facebook entities that create Facebook apps. So you would imagine, you at least hope that Facebook has some level of vetting of these entities, but these are third parties that created these exposures. One of them is a digital media company called Cultura Collective. And the other one is a defunct app maker called At the Pool. Basically, they had S3 storage servers that were exposed. We've talked about this before. So S3, I think it stands for Simple Storage Service maybe. Anyway, 3 S's, so it's, people refer to it as S3, and it's an Amazon service where you just, it's just a place where you can dump data, but it's accessible through a web interface. So if you set it up incorrectly, if you configure it incorrectly, then people can get to it right over the internet, just like almost any other thing that exists in the Amazon environment. And honestly, it's sort of difficult to configure these things incorrectly, but it happens. When you try to make your S3 bucket exposed to the world, for example, you get all kinds of warnings that say, you know, this is the thing that you shouldn't do. Are you sure you want to do this, et cetera, et cetera. There are cases in which you want things exposed to the world, though, and you know, even in the cyber range, we have some things that we want users to be able to get to pull down so that they can work on CTF challenges, for example. And to host some of that stuff, we have exposed S3 buckets. We know exactly where those, you know, storage servers are located and what the exposure level is. The data is readable, not writable, et cetera, but still, you know, we do have some exposed. So it's possible to make S3 storage servers available to the public, but that's not the default configuration. People have to actively do it, and so this is somebody who clearly made an error. A bunch of exposed data in both of these storage servers includes usernames and some plain text passwords, lists of friends, lists of interest, photos, group memberships, check-in locations. So now you have things like usernames, passwords, and some record of locations of where the users, you know, have been located. So another bit of a black eye for Facebook. This happened actually at the end of last week. So I think the story, I pulled this down yesterday and said 5 days ago. I think it was on the 3rd of April. Okay, here's another story. I just pulled this up because I thought it was kind of funny. Across the US, popular video doorbells are recording their own thefts. So I'm not sure if you've seen these video doorbell, right? So it's a doorbell, but it has a video camera on it, and you can connect this to your home network. I actually have one of these. It's not hanging outside my front door. It's in a closet inside the house. I got it given to me as a speaker gift. I spoke at an AWS conference last year in Seattle, and the speaker gift was one of these Ring video doorbells. I don't know. I may hang it up someday, but so anyway, these things will, you know, when somebody pushes the button, the video camera will come on, and so you can see who's outside. And I don't know what else you can do with them. There may be some like motion sensor or something. I imagine there's probably a motion sensor so that if there's motion in front of the door, then the thing will come on and you can see who's out in front of your door. I honestly don't know what all the features are, but one feature seems to be that it'll record itself being stolen. And so, you know, in order to do that, there must be some kind of a motion sensor, I imagine. But people are like pulling these off the door. You know, it's basically hanging on the outside of your house, and there may be a couple of wires that you know are the power wires that went to the old doorbell that you replaced with this thing. But obviously, it'd be very easy to steal this thing off the wall, and so these things are getting stolen, and people are finding recordings. You know, the thing will record what it sees, and it'll put it somewhere where you can get to it. So that, you know, you get a recording of somebody stealing your doorbell. There was actually a little bit of a controversy a couple of months ago because these recordings are stored in the cloud, and I guess there were Amazon employees who had access to that data, and so they could see the recordings made outside the front of your house, and so for whatever reason that caused some level of controversy. And here's the last news story. So Microsoft Edge is, this is not an April Fool's joke. Microsoft Edge is creating a new browser, so they're eventually going to deprecate the current version of Microsoft Edge, and they're building it using Chrome, well, Chromium really. Chromium is the open source software that underlies the Chrome browser that is the Google browser that's used pretty widely. It's, you know, Chrome works with any platform, and it's open source software. And you know, there are people who have concerns about Google Chrome because it's a Google thing, right? So anything you do, it's going to be collecting data, and it's going to be sending it to Google so that they know what you're searching for on the web. They're going to know I don't know, it's probably got hooks into social media and email and all that kind of stuff. So there's people that are concerned about the Chrome browser. So now Edge, instead of using whatever powered Edge before, now it's going to be powered by Chromium, and you can actually get this. You can get this now. It's not even beta yet. So coming soon for Windows 10 is the beta version. Beta version is usually the first version that people are allowed to try out, and that's, well, sometimes you'll have an alpha version, right? And alpha means this thing is really buggy, so don't use it in a production workload. The beta version is usually, hey, this thing isn't quite ready for prime time, but you know, if you're an early adopter, you're welcome to play around with it. They have so the developers actually have a dev channel and a canary channel, and the canary channel, this is the daily build of the latest version of the Edge, the Chrome-based Edge browser. So you can, if you're, you can get access to this canary build, and this is like from a Microsoft website. So if you do some Googling looking for, you know, Microsoft Edge Insider channels, you can, on a daily basis, you can download the latest version of the canary channel of Chrome, and this is the daily build. So this is gonna be the latest and greatest features, and also the latest and greatest bugs. But you know, if they're to the point where they're releasing some version of it, it's probably at least functional. And then, so this is for like cutting edge people, right? The dev channel is a weekly build. So this is the most stable build of the previous week. And so if you want to try that, you can pull it down, and you know, you could pull a new version of that every week and work with it. And then coming soon, they say, is the beta version, and so the beta will be updated every 6 weeks. So that'll be the you know, that's when it's a little bit more you know, close to being released as the no kidding new version of the Edge browser. But eventually, you know, I would imagine in a couple of months, the old Edge browser will go away, and this new Chrome-based one will be introduced. And I'm not quite sure all the reasons behind that. I think they, I don't know, Microsoft maybe just, I don't know if they're having problems with Edge, or if it's got security issues that they didn't want to deal with, or what. But anyway, it's getting replaced by a new version based on Chrome. Okay, web challenges part 2, and next week more CTF challenges. So I'm going to talk about you know, we did some easy web challenges last week. I'm going to pull up the CTF site here in a minute and remind myself of what we did last week. This week we'll do some more. You know, I'm not a web challenge ninja. It's just been a long time since I've been sort of a serious web page developer. I've done some web page development before, but not something I do on a regular basis these days. But we're going to take a look at a couple of more web challenges this week. At least you'll get an idea of how to approach these things. All right, so let me pull up this. Let me just back up a couple of slides. All right, so last week we talked about you know, web challenges on the easy end. You know, so if you can do things like view page source, you know, you can open the developer panel and see the interaction between, you know, you can see some web source, you can see some of the scripting. You can maybe examine network traffic using Wireshark. You can curl the web page, you know, look for robots that text. These are kind of the entry level, easy stuff that you can do. Last week we talked about sort of the early model of the web, where you're just grabbing text files out of the file system of a web server. Now it's much more complicated. Now you can enter things into a form on a web page, and you can get the server to take action on your behalf, which is which leads to the potential for somebody to do something malicious. We talked about the HTTP protocol. what it looks like. In fact, I think we pulled up a exchange in Wireshark, and we actually saw the HTTP interaction between a web browser and a web server. That's this next slide. So yeah, so here's the HTTP request, and then here, and so the HTTP request has, it's a GET request. It's asking for something from acm.org. There's some header data, keep the connection alive. Here's the user agent string. So this tells you what type of system the user, the web server, or I'm sorry, the web client is running on, what encodings it will accept. This is obviously done from a Windows NT system using Mozilla, which is Firefox. And then here is the response from the server, right? So 200 OK means, yes, I have that. I have what you're looking for, and I'm going to send it to you. Here's the date. Server is, so here's user agent string. For the server, it's an Apache 1.1. Here's the format I'm going to send your data in. Here's how long it is. And then down at the bottom, this is the actual HTML page that's being returned. So that's the HTTP interaction between a client and a server. And so so we looked at some of the easy challenges. Some of the more advanced challenges require some more advanced understanding of web technologies, right? So if you understand how web pages interact with databases, and so PHP is a pretty widely used technology for that. Another one is JavaScript. So you're gonna, if you understand how a website interacts with a backend SQL database, that's going to help you out a lot. You could use that to do like SQL injection attacks. I guess maybe we can look at some SQL injection today. I don't know if we've done that before or not. You might be able to do some kind of cross-site scripting, poor coding or site maintenance practices. These are ways that, if you understand how a website should be set up or how a web server should be set up, then that gives you insight into ways to screw it up, and those are sometimes incorporated into CTF challenges. So what kinds of things are you going to be looking for? Well, you might be looking for buggy PHP apps, and we'll take a look at PHP here in a second. You might want to look for some sensitive data exposure. So, so sensitive data, what sort of sensitive data could be exposed? Who knows? You might have the ability to do directory traversal and get to files in the file system that you're not supposed to be able to get to as somebody who's browsing a web server. So there's various data. Sensitive data might be left in a folder in the file system, of the website itself, and in that case, you would be able to get to it just using your browser. So, and one bit of sensitive data that might be exposed is version control artifacts, and we'll take a look at that in one of the challenges that we're going to look at today. You might look for broken authentication. So if somebody's using a weak technique for authenticating users, that's a thing that you might be able to exploit. Default installations. So when somebody first installs the Apache web server on a system, for example, if I do an apt-get install Apache 2 on my Linux system, then Apache is going to get installed, and it's going to start running. And sometimes people aren't quite prepared for that, right? They do the apt-get install Apache 2, and and like most software, when you install it, it's ready for you to use. But with Apache and with some of these services, when you install it, it's gonna start doing its thing, right? And so when that server is first installed and running, what's it serving up? Well, it's serving up a default web page, and that default web page, maybe we'll take a look at one of those today too, if I remember all this stuff that I think we're going to look at. The default web page is just kind of a basic Apache web page. It gives, it's sort of the fact page for the Apache program, and it's pretty benign. But there are some types of software that install and run, and you maybe don't quite realize it. And those are sometimes things that you can log into, and those things will start running with a default username and password. And if you don't change that right away, then somebody else could log into it and start doing weird things to your website, and you want to avoid that. And then there are some inclusion vulnerabilities, file inclusion, for example, where somebody can upload a file when they're not supposed to be doing that, and then the file maybe gets executed somewhere in the system or something like that. So some tools that you can use. We talked about some of these already. You can use the developer tools. You're in Chrome and you hit F12, and now the developer panel comes up. You can use Wireshark or TCP dump to examine the web traffic. You can use ngrep. So if you capture the packets of your interaction, then you can use ngrep to search for strings in a packet capture. You might use a web proxy, and we may get to this where we use a tool called OWASP Zap, which is a web proxy that lets you do sort of this man-in-the-middle attack. Or there are other things you can do with this tool like this, and we'll use that to do a password guessing attack. Again, that's inside the Cyber Basics exercise environment in the cyber range. So I mentioned that I was gonna. I think I'm gonna stop there for now. Yeah. So. So I'm going to pull up my web browser. I mentioned okay, that's still running. So I mentioned PHP. So if you're not familiar with PHP, PHP is a programming language that is used to have an interactive web page, right? So again, in the early days, web pages were just a text file with HTML tags, and the HTML tags told the web browser how to render the page. Nowadays, you have PHP, and you can do much more sophisticated things because PHP is a no-kidding programming language. And so I'm going to Google here, PHP hello world, and there's this. So there's several examples of this. I'm going to pull up this. I'm going to pull up the Wikibooks version of this. So so here is. Well, so let me back up. I'm going to grab a simpler. Let's see. Yeah, I was hoping there was a simpler example of this, but I'm not. But I thought there was a different example. Maybe it's this first one. I wanted to show you what the website. Okay, so so here's what a web page. If you're just using straight HTML, here's what a web page may look like in HTML. You have a HTML open tag and then an HTML close tag at the end. So that between the HTML and the closed HTML tag, that's the entirety of the website or of the web page. You have the head section, the closed head, and a title, and this title is going to show up not in the page, but it's going to show up in the tab. And then you have a body, and here I say hello world, and this is pure HTML. Well, in PHP, you can use the PHP programming language, and you can embed it in your HTML. So here I say, here's the HTML open close, here's the header section, nothing changes there, here's the open body, closed body, but inside here I say PHP echo, and this is like a print statement in some other programming language. I'm going to echo, and then in the quotes I have open paragraph, hello world, close paragraph. And that's the thing that goes in here, right? But, so you might say, well, gee, that's not super interesting. I'm basically typing in more stuff than I would if I just typed in the straight HTML. But if I go to this page, what I can do is I can, so here's another hello world example. So here I say echo hello world, echo PHP is so easy. Okay, and this is what I get. This is my output. Okay, well here, it's the very simple version. I'm just echoing strings, but what PHP allows me to do, like any other programming language, like most of the programming languages, is it gives me the ability to specify variables. And so then I have a string that equals hello world, and then I echo the string and I print the string, and now I can, now I get, that's what comes out, right? So the power here is that if I can set variables and I can cause, print out the values stored in variables, then what I can do is I can ask the user for a variable. So maybe I ask the user, hey, what's your name? And then they type in their name in a text box in the web page, and then I print out hello, and then I put their name. Okay, that's a little bit more interesting. I could get even more sophisticated if I said, hey user, put in a IP address, and I will ping that IP address for you, and I will print out the results of this web page. So then the person types in an IP address, and you send that to your exec PHP command, and it's going to execute ping and then the IP address, and you get it back and you spit it out. Well, when you start doing things like that, then there is room for a malicious user to type in things that cause the system to act on their behalf and do something malicious. And so the more sophisticated these PHP applications become, the more room there is for somebody to use it in a malicious way. And so having an understanding of how PHP works is helpful to doing well in CTF challenges. And as I think I mentioned during most of these sessions, capture the flag competitions are really, they're a learning activity disguised as a competition, right? So the whole point is to teach students things, and if they can learn how not to configure their PHP app, then we've helped the student know how what they're doing is the wrong thing. So it's all so that is that's helpful. So I'm gonna log in here. I have to keep logging in. Okay, so I'm gonna pull up my. So let's take a look at some of these more advanced web challenges, and we'll think first about. Oh, do I already have practice CTF up? Yeah, I was doing some CTF work this morning with a young high school student. Okay, so web challenges. Oop, I went past them. Oops, I don't want full screen mode. I want part screen mode. So last week we looked at agent 000. So this was a flag that was just hidden in a comment in the in an HTML page. We looked at robots.txt, right? So with robots.txt, you put robots.txt at the that file is going to be located in the root of the website's file system. So if you do domain/robots.txt, then you'll see the folders that a search engine is not supposed to search, and then if you look in there, in this case, you find the answer. Career change. Here we had an image that was hidden. Or an image on a web page that was commented out, and if you went to your URL bar, typed in the website name / the name of the image, then you pull down the image and you would see that there was a message encoded on the image, and so that's the solution to that. I didn't go through the whole decoding the Morse code, but that's how you solve that one. Now we're going to take a look at this one called Bravo. And it says, perhaps we can direct your attention over here. So if you recall, Several weeks ago when I started out this series on CTF challenges, I talked about the hints having meaning, and particularly if a hint seems sort of obscure, then there's probably meaning in it. And this one says, perhaps we can direct your attention over here. So this is not very helpful, right? So there's probably some sort of hidden message in this thing. And then there's a link to a website, and I'm gonna open up another tab. It says to view the rest of the website, log in here. So I'm gonna type in admin. I don't know what the so I'm trying to log in, that's not working. So then what I might do is I might look at the page source. Maybe this thing is set up so that maybe this thing is set up with some weird PHP variable that just expects you to type in. So here I'll look at the page source. There's that part. See the rest of the site login here. Here's a placeholder, username. Okay, so this is my username text entry box. This is my password text entry box. And then there's a submit button that has the word submit on it. But that's my form, but my form doesn't have any actions associated with it. So that's kind of puzzling. Now it says this will keep hackers out. They can't even view our index without being redirected. So they can't even view our index without being redirected. Okay, so this, perhaps we can direct your attention over here. This is referring to redirects. And so what a redirect is when a website is set up to, if you type in, try to go to a certain page, it's going to redirect you to another page. And there are reasons why you might want to do that. We'll get into all the reasons, but there are reasons why you might redirect somebody from one page to another. So here, like if they're not logged in, right? If they're going to a site and they're not logged in, you might redirect them back to the login page, for example. So here it says they can't even get to our index. Okay, so I'm going to go up to the top here, and I'm going to type in. Can't even get to our index. So let me type in index.html, and I get, oh, okay, that's not found. Okay, so I got a not found, file not found. There is no index.html. I didn't get redirected though. What I want is to get redirected. So let me try index.php. Let's see what I get there. Oh, and look what happened. When I type in index.php, I get redirected back to the login.php page. And that's not helpful, right? So so I'm in my developer tab and I can't see the thing on the index.php page. I want to see the contents of index.php because that it leads me to believe I'm getting redirected from there. That's probably got something in it related to the flag, and they're in the developer tab. I can't see it here. So what do I do? Well, there's a couple approaches I could take here, and any one of these is a valid approach. One of them, so my problem here is that the data came to my computer, right? I went to index.php, and that content got downloaded. I just can't see it because my web browser redirects before I can read the contents of that thing. So so what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to capture that index.php in a way that can't get blown away when the browser redirects. A couple of different ways I could do that. One way is to use Wireshark, right? So I could start up Wireshark. I could go to bravo.virginiacybernews.net/index.php, and Wireshark would capture that interaction. And then it would also capture the redirect. And then I could look at what Wireshark captured and see what happened. Another way to do it is to curl cyberrange.net/index.php. So here I'm going to use the curl command. Curl is a way to grab the contents of web pages from the command line. And what happened? Well, curl, I got a blank bunch of nothing. So let me scroll up here, scrolling up, and here, okay, so I go way up here, there's my secret message, right? If I go way up to the top, there's my curl command. I got a bunch of blank lines. This is my index.php, and then it says go to, and then here is this big long crazy number.php. So maybe I want to copy that, copy. So now, let's do this. Now let's curl that thing that I just found. And here I get, that is another PHP page, and it says HTML. There's the open close for the HTML page. It says, good job, your flag is, and here's the flag, insecure redirects are bad. So that is the solution. I hope. Yes. Okay, so that's how we solved that one. That one's worth 75 points. Might be a high point value for that challenge. This one is more difficult. It's delta. So I'd mentioned previously that the name of the challenge is sometimes a hint. In this case, it's not. So this was a part of a series of web challenges that we used at a collegiate CTF competition last year, and they were just sequentially named Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta. So this is Delta, and it's another. So I'm going to kill Bravo here. So it's another web page, and the hint is get after it. Get after it. GIT. Get. So you may or may know. So reading that, you may or may not already say, "Okay, I have an understanding of this," but it really depends on it depends on sort of your history and what you're already aware of from a CS perspective. Okay, so here we are. Here's the delta.virginiacyberrange.net page. Welcome to our flag site. Here we're dedicated to celebrating all kinds of flags from around the world. Our team is working on developing this site together, yada, yada, yada. Flag gallery. It's not super interesting. Whoops. History of flags. Not very interesting. Doesn't seem to be anything hidden here. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to developer panel, and okay, there's these weird hints, or not hints, comments. So there's some HTML content, and here's a comment. Are you serious, Jeremy? You've done nothing so far. Ugh. And your commit messages aren't funny. Get it together. Your commit messages aren't funny. Okay, so we saw the get, the reference to get on the description of the challenge, and then this says your commit messages aren't funny. Get it together. So now we're sort of being led down a path towards some kind of version control system. So when you do version control, so GIT is a tool for version control. It was developed by the creator of the Linux operating system, a guy named Linus Torvalds. So let's go back. Let's see if there's any other. So there's no comments on this page. Let's look at the flag gallery and see what it says here. Whoops. Here it says, here's another comment. It says, team, I made some changes and removed our secret flag for now. The world just isn't ready for it. The site's got to be perfect before anyone gets to see it. If you want to know everything I changed, just check our VCS, version control system. Okay, so now I know that there's a version control system being used. And, so maybe I could Google version control system Git, and here's all kinds of info about Git, about using Git as a version control tool. So what Git does, if you use it for version control on a website, for example, it's possible for you to see. It's possible for if it's not done well, it's possible to actually see that in the folder hierarchy of the website itself. And so I mentioned earlier about exposing important data. So Git uses this hidden file called .git. And if I go there, here's an index of .git. So .git is a directory, and inside the directory is some stuff. And so you can kind of poop around in here, search around. You're not going to find anything very interesting unless you really know what you're looking for. Still, you probably won't be able to find anything really super interesting. But what I'm going to do is, I want to figure out what I can do with this. So I'm going to go back to Google, and I'm going to put in publicly exposed .git folder. See what happens. Don't publicly, so here's the first. Okay, source code disclosure via expose.git folder, pentester land. Okay, don't publicly expose.git, or how we download your website's source code. Okay, so what is version control? So this website here has some information on version control. It has some information on Git. Why is hosting your version control system in production bad? So here's why you don't want to do what the person did on this particular website. And so there's some so this website explains how I can pull down the information about that version control. And so I'm going to use wget, and I'm going to use wget -mirror-i.git, and then so let me do a copy, paste, and then the name of the website. So it's delta.virginiacyberrange.net/.git. So all I'm doing is I read the top of this web page. I'm going to go through all of it now, but I read the top of this web page, and this says do this. So wget -mirror-i.git, then the target, which in this case is delta.virginiacyberrange.net/.git, and that's going to mirror that whole folder hierarchy from that website. So I do that, and you see a bunch of stuff got downloaded. So now if I do an ls, now there's this delta.virginiacyberrange.net. So I can cd delta.virginiacyberrange.net, and here's that. There's the .git file. If I cd in there, I can explore around a little bit. But if I was to go further down this path of understanding how Git works and how to know the ins and outs, then I would get to a point where I would know that if I look at the log, I can see the commit messages. And remember, one of the hints in the comments in the HTML pages was something about, hey, your commit messages aren't funny. Well, if I want to see the history of commit messages, then I would say get log, and what I should see in here somewhere is I should see removed our super secret flag from the gallery, doesn't understand, added more to the gallery. Maybe I need to, there's probably a command line switch I'm supposed to put on that. Yeah, so I put a -P on there. So here is the history of the changes and the commit messages. Team, I made some changes, removed our secret flag. If I continue through this, nothing so far. What's wrong with you? If I went through this, searching around, what I might want to do is grep the word flag. Oh, here it is. Okay, so I'm gonna do that again, but I'm gonna grep flag and then the bracket thingy. Okay, so here's the flag, right? Flag, get good at security. Get good at security. So if I copy that, go back to my CTF, paste, submit. Okay. Okay, last quick thing we're going to do is let's see if we're going to be able to pull this off. So yeah, I'm going to save this for another time. So in a later workshop, probably not part of the CTF series, but in a later workshop, I'm going to do some, I'm sensitive of time and I don't want to go too much further. So in a later workshop, I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about the, talking about a web proxy and how you might be able to use that in web application penetration testing and maybe in some CTF challenge solutions. I'll do that another time, probably not next week, because I want to move off from web challenges and talk a little bit about different kinds of reverse engineering challenges that you might see and some approaches to solving those. And then I think we'll wrap up after that with reconnaissance challenges. So this ends us for today, and hopefully you got a pretty good sense of at least some introductory to intermediate level web challenges. So thanks for joining.